And before I start watching this video, I'd like to extend my thanks to these wonderful people who helped me to make this information accessible to an international audience.
Hi everyone, Hrust from Storyboard Creativity here, and I know how ZRAW works. I know the way it encodes video and the way it stores data. I know their real names, their fake names, and I have their photos. Wrong text. Today I'd like to tell all the ZCam E2 users about the way ZRAW format works and announce something very interesting along the way. But first things first, I'd like to mention at once that this is not a ZCam E2 review, nor is it a simple recap of other articles or videos about this camera. The information I present in this video is for the most part exclusive. You won't be able to find it anywhere else, at least at the time this video is being recorded. So I'd like you to keep your ears open and listen closely. Today I will tell you the results of the ZCam E2 firmware research, which I was focused on the ZRAW codec. A while back, an article at the slashcam website gave me a pretentious nickname Der Hacker Rustam Zaripov, which is a little over the top for me, because I'm a rather lousy hacker. The information in the article is taken directly from my post in a Facebook group, where I shared my ZRAW codec findings with the community. However, I haven't provided any technical details, which is only natural since I try to be careful when going about the codec research. It's a complex process and you can never be too sure about how something works, and there can always remain some blind spots, which are hard to interpret at the time. The first question I wanted to answer for several months was, does the ZRAW correspond to RAW video at all? I know it can sound strange considering the RAW in the codec's name. Anyway, Rustam, why the doubts, you'll ask? And I'll tell you why. Should we open the ZRAW video suite and try to import our video there? We'll be surprised to find out that it's not gonna happen. ZRAW Video Suite acts like it is the final stage of working with RAW video and only allows to export some unclear elements that don't have anything to do with RAW video. So any preliminary footage correction would have to be done only in the Video Suite every time. At this point I had some doubts about the ZRAW, because considering all these conditions, Video Suite lacked some settings. For instance, how about choosing a debayering algorithm and its options, or customizing color conversion and black levels? I mean, there are too many options that the user can't tweak, don't you think? But if ZRAW wasn't RAW at all, it would have explained a lot of things. A certain pre-processing happens in the camera, and what it stores on the drive isn't pure RAW anymore. In fact, you can take a look at the ZCam website, where there is an interesting addition carefully put in brackets against the ZRAW feature. It says, partial debayer, and its functions are unclear since there is no specification or description provided, which naturally implies that the ZRAW is hardly related to actual RAW video. This is where my path of samurai begins. Since ZCam named their codec ZRAW and positioned it as RAW, turns out they lied to their consumers, right? And lied to me. And I don't like being lied to. So I had nothing left to count on but my own brains. It didn't take me too long to find out that a .ZRAW file is nothing more than a basic .mov container with several tracks, including an H.265 proxy track. You can make sure of it by opening the file in the media info or changing its extension to .mov, which will allow you to watch it in a media player classic, for instance. Moreover, you'll probably be able to open the video in the some editing tool, but don't be fooled by it. Editing software can't work with the ZRAW codec. just with the H.265 proxy track, which isn't what you need. Let's take another look at our ZRAW track in Media Info. Here we can see durations, shot dimensions, and so on. Yet there are two aspects that interest us the most: bitrate and color space. The scariest thing being the second field, which says YUV and doesn't seem to have anything to do with the raw video. So does it mean that we've been played after all? Let's not jump to conclusions. There is a track's metadata which can basically contain anything. So let's continue our observation and return to the first field I've mentioned, the bitrate. As you can remember, the ZCam E2 features the Sony IMX299 sensor, so we can easily look at its specifications. What do we see there? It turns out that the number of pixels on the sensor is fourfold due to the quad Bayer structure. I suggest cutting ZCam some slack and assuming that their so-called partial de-Bayer is in fact the process of uniting these 4 sub-pixels into one. By the way, there are some similarities in the IMX294 sensor, which is used in the Panasonic GH5S and in the Blackmagic cinema camera, if I'm not mistaken. Blackmagic also features partial de-Bayering, at least according to their website. So the stored video won't be large and RAW's dimensions will correspond to the specified ones. Taking this into account, I assume double compression in my case. However, this is relevant only if the intensity of each pixel is stored as a 12-bit integer. This information gives us a lot, since such a small compression ratio implies lossless compression and gives us a small hope that the ZCam didn't lie to us. Yet, this information wasn't enough for me, so I started a full-scale research on the ZCam E2 firmware with a focus on the ZRAW codec, compression method, and so on. And now I'm able to provide technical details on how the ZRAW works. But first I have to make an important statement. You're gonna have to take my word for the information I'm about to present. There won't be any proof provided here. There are several reasons for that. First of all, should I try to explain the research and how to recreate the results, you probably won't understand it, since most likely you're not programmers, but cinematographers. The second reason has to do with ZCam's reputation and will be pronounced later. So for now, let us agree on a disclaimer of sorts. Everything said in this video is the result of the author's sick fantasy and likely has nothing to do with reality. So how does ZRAW work? I'll try to explain how the data is being stored without going into too much detail. The important thing is to do it clearly and vividly. The ZRAW video stream consists of a number of separate shots, and each of them can be decoded independently. Each shot consists of a number of blocks which have identifiers. For instance, a block with the ZRAW identifier refers to the whole shot and consists of several sub-blocks. The sub-blocks can be very different, but here are the most popular ones. Ver, version information. Param, the shot's parameters, its resolution, color components, bit depth, and many other details. DPC, which stands for defective pixel correction. Information on sensor pixels that are either cold or hot. Bright dot defects always show white color, while dark dot defects are always black. This table is a result of sensor calibration. AWB, as you might have guessed, the automatic white balance and gain info. BLC, black level on the sensor for each color component. Meta, different metadata. To be honest, I haven't quite figured it out yet, but it's not that important actually. CCM, color correction matrix. It was funny to find out that they use the AES encryption in this block. I honestly have no idea why someone would want to encrypt the color matrix. Whatever, it's up to them. It's their format after all, and they can do whatever they want with it. gamma curve information. Last but not least, the data block, the largest, most spacious and probably most important block. This block comprises all the contents of the shot in a specific format. I suggest taking a careful look at it. Yet the codec itself uses the YUV422 scheme, which once again implies that the data has already been debayered and we've been fooled. But we're already here, so let's keep going. Each shot breaks into independent lines that differ only in parity, and each line breaks into 64 pixel blocks. In fact, each of these 64 pixel blocks consists of two 32 pixel blocks. Every other pixel in the block is stored by means of alternation. It may seem strange at the moment, friends, but will soon become obvious. Moreover, the shot data itself can be stored in two modes. The first is RAW, without compression of any kind. The ZCam E2 doesn't use this mode, I believe because it would be tough on the performance. But there is also another storing mode, the one used in the ZCam E2, at least in the firmware version 0.93. The mode is called VL, or variable length, meaning that each line is compressed independently and its length depends on the efficiency of compression. This mode uses several tricks that allow us to save some space. First, it uses Huffman's algorithm of data storing. I won't be explaining how this works or going into technical details of Huffman tree and data storing and so on and so forth now. I would rather just leave a link to a source which explains the algorithm visually in the description. Or you can look it up, there is a lot of information in the internet. Second, each block on the line is encoded based on the same block of the previous line. Now this is interesting. This is how it works. Blocks on the first line are encoded based on the identical blocks in the zero line. Zero line is an imaginary line which actually isn't there. It's filled with the default values and the following lines are encoded according to the previous ones. Why would they do this? Most likely because instead of pixel values, it can now store differences from one line to another that are considerably smaller and can be compressed more efficiently. This increases the performance while storing the data. However, we still have an unanswered question. Why does it store pixels in the blocks by means of alternation? And most importantly, why one of these two stored blocks is based on the previous line and another is based on the line before previous? The answer is actually pretty simple. If we look at the param block, we will be able to find out, among other things, a very important field which shows the used Bayer pattern. Wait a minute there, a Bayer pattern? Yet the codec itself uses the YUV422 scheme. Okay, I see. What do you have there? Alternating pixels in the blocks, right? Long story short, experience has shown that instead of using YUV422, the image is stored directly as a Bayer pattern. I even suppose that the ZRAW codec used to have another name and was used to compress YUV422 images. But then it suddenly turned out that the YUV422 uses just as much space as the Bayer pattern. So they decided to store it like this. As we know, the ZCam E2 features ZRAW not from the start, but after certain firmware updates, so everything is possible. One way or another, this is the good news for the users, because the data seems to be true RAW after all, despite my previous suspicions. As you can see, even though the system isn't particularly complex, it still requires time to research and there is absolutely no information in free access. By the way, it may seem that the information I provide in this video brings no personal benefits for the ZCam E2 users, but this is not quite true. First of all, you are now aware that the ZRAW is a true 12-bit RAW format, or some other bit depth RAW, depending on how it's stored. I'm not sure about other cameras in this series, but the codec supports color components up to 16 bits. Second, Now you don't need to buy an Atomos recorder, which is promoted so actively as a part of the ZCam and Atomos collaboration to record ProRes RAW, because the camera can record raw material on the same bit depth. So why pay more if you can do it just within the camera? Third, and the most exciting news for today, is that I wrote my own analog of the ZRAW decoder, which not only allows you to convert your ZRAW video into some intermediate codec, but to get a full-scale, free-format Adobe DNG sequence usable anywhere as RAW video. Oh, right. Remember how ZCam wrote that they used the Z-Log 2 color space? You can even notice that choosing ZRAW leaves you with no choice for color space but Z-Log, at least in the 0.93 firmware. You can forget about it. Actually, ZRAW stores simple linear color. At least this was in my case. I've made sure by using a color checker. Even better that way, since it's RAW, why would we need any additional color transformations? I think the only case would be if we would need to store data in a lower bit depth than it was recorded in. Then we would use a curve which allows us to store more data which concerns dark frame parts. But in my case, the camera was recording video in 12-bit and the ZRAW also stored it in 12-bit. There were no additional transformations, even though the Z-Log 2 was only a selectable option in the menu. All in all, I'll be finishing my converter pretty soon, and it will allow anyone to convert ZRAW into Adobe DNG, at least if there are no considerable changes in the upcoming firmware, which I can't foretell. In any case, there is a couple of things worth mentioning. First, the source code. The thing is, I really respect ZCam as a company, and I have been following their products since the ZCam E1 series. By the way, I also made the bit depth increasing patches for the camera, which are available for free via the GitHub link in the description. So, publishing my source code now won't be respectful to ZCam. Thing is, I believe that the ZRAW format was supposed to be proprietary and closed to the public. I have some thoughts on why would someone make a closed format, but I don't feel like going into details. There are several possible reasons. They probably wanted to attract cinematographers and develop quality software that only allows working with the specific format. Somehow developing a quality editing software which is based on the video suit sounds absurd and doesn't seem possible with their manufacturing resources. Naturally, this is just my subjective guess, nothing more than a speculation. In fact, no matter the reasons behind making the ZRAW proprietary, it would be wrong to ruin their plans like that. I'm not doing this to get under their skin. This is just a hobby of mine. I enjoy researching anything I buy and customizing it to myself. I can even say that I bought the E1 and the E2 officially and never had any problems with them. I've shared my insight with the community just in case someone other than me would also appreciate it. This is where the problem with source codes begins. I'm probably going to contact ZCam representatives about it soon after all. However, I can hardly imagine how, because they've banned me from everywhere and don't answer my emails anymore. But they have their reasons. I believe I would do the same in their place. Getting a bit ahead of things, I would like to assure anyone who have been waiting for the converter, I will release it in any case, however not as source code, if I won't be able to negotiate it with ZCam, but as a binary file. It will be more than sufficient for you for now, and I will be releasing the source code later, maybe in a year or two, or in the worst case scenario when the cameras are no longer relevant and there are newer models on the market. Second, changes in codec operation. The thing is, there is a more complex aspect to my relationship with ZCam. What if not only they refuse to talk to me, but will also try to put spokes in our wheels? How would they do it? Pretty easy. They can just change the way the ZRAW codec operates in one of the next firmware updates. So I would have to start the research over again, and my current converter and the other patches would be outdated and wouldn't work with the video shot with the new firmware. This would be rather sad outcome, my friends, because I doubt that I would be taking on this path of samurai once again. Not only I would have to go through it over again, you would have to wait for a newer version of the converter for another several months. Basically, lots of meaningless fuss. So, what workarounds do we have? Well, the first and the most obvious one is not to update at all. Just don't install the new ZCam firmware version whenever it's out and keep using the old one along with the converter.
Админ, что за вброс? Так, все, я избавляюсь от этого старья и закрываю клуб. Нужно обновляться, чего и вам советую.
Никто не смеет мне советовать.
However, there are several obvious downsides to it. You won't be getting the new features and new bug fixes of the new firmwares. You won't be able to enjoy them. And if you think that you can always downgrade to another older version, you're mistaken. ZCam have already released several firmwares that do not allow downgrading. Meaning when you install it, there is no going back. So be careful, because they can do it again. But there is also a second option to raise enough public attention and bring the most of the ZCam E2 and other cameras users to our side, thus provoking the company to find a workaround. You see, I believe the company would love to provide an efficient solution for the problem, however, their efforts may be restricted by different patents or other difficulties. For instance, financial. So, if they are unaware of what their users need the most, they will keep moving in other directions that are of a higher priority to them. And it's important to constantly remind the company of what we need. Like if they don't want to lose their customers in the RAW department, they will have to improve user experience with their software. Or if they are not going to open the source code of their codec and will just leave it proprietary, another option is to make a ZRAW to Adobe DNG or any other free format converter. But honestly, I would suggest using RAW, a great free codec which uses wavelet transforms and is distributed under MIT license with its source code is available via GitHub. I can see the goal, but no obstructions, so what's the problem? I understand that there are several pitfalls on this path. For one, as a recall, Cineform isn't supported in DaVinci. But one way or another, it's an old war, which can only be won by the users. The Cineform itself can be converted into anything because it's open source. But your proprietary ZRAW is almost no good at the moment. Don't get me wrong, I have the same complaint for Blackmagic. But their case is absolutely different. They do have a proprietary BRAW codec, but their software is very well known in the industry, which allows them to stay afloat. Your case is completely different, and making a closed codec somehow seems a rather irrational decision to me. All in all, the situation is rather depressing for now. In any case, everything I said before doesn't deny my respect to ZCam, which I still consider a great company. I find it sad that they stopped producing compact cameras that resemble GoPro visually and feature interchangeable lenses. I'm sure they would have found a lot of customers in this niche if they kept releasing them. Anyway, I have no idea what's going on upstairs in the big bosses' heads and what are their long-term perspectives, so I'd rather mind my own business. Well, this was their hacker from Storyboard Creativity. Stay tuned for the converter and see you soon.